Welcome back, everyone. Today I want to talk to you about the hosting side of this. So in the last video, we looked at the website design and how we can use Claude to design websites and design our own printing or whatever business we want to do so we can sell products using Shopify with a basic template generated by Claude. Now, I did hope that part 2 would be the project files section, but we're going to have to push that on to a future episode, just purely based on the time. I don't like making insanely long videos, so we're going to try and move this one along. Today, we're going to be looking at Linux Ubuntu. I'm not going to be inside a server. I'm just going to be going through what it told me to do and what prompts I've used to get those outputs. Okay, it's very simple. You just need to use conversational commands to try and ask it, like, explain what you want to do, and then it should give you good instructions on how to fix the problem. The problem that we're looking at today is SSL certificates and hosting multiple websites on a single server. This assumes that you've already got a website hosted on a server, but that won't matter because, well, you'll see. So we're going to kick this off with hosting multiple websites on a single server. And my first prompt is, my website is hosted on my private server. I currently have the server set up in var www HTML, and it's the only website on my server. I want to host a second website on the same server, which is on a separate domain. And also, just to help you guys that couldn't remember, I cannot remember if I'm using Apache or Nginx. There are lots of tutorials out there. And if you've got an old website, it might be a couple of years since you even looked at the code. So I wanted to also throw this little spanner into the works just to see if it can help with that. Please help me to determine which method I'm using and then modify it so I can use both domains for each separated website on the same physical server I own. And so it's done exactly that. First, let's determine if you're using Apache or Nginx. Run these commands. Now, I want to point out right now, there's going to be a few of you that really do know what you're doing. And I've been doing this since 1996, and I like to look at this from the perspective of an absolute novice. The main reason is because you can't really guess what skill level people are going to be at when they're looking at these tutorials that I'm making. And I really want to stress that this can open things up for you and expand your possibilities. So first of all, there could be, like I said, if you followed a tutorial to set up your first website, you probably did it with either Apache 2 or Nginx. There's no real way to know which tutorial that you've used. It may even be some other system, I don't know, but these are the two most common ones, all right? I don't want to try and say this is going to work for everyone. It's very difficult to make a one-size-fits-all tutorial. But as you can see, this would have taken you a decent amount of time to research if you couldn't remember or followed a tutorial that you didn't really understand, and you managed to get it working, but you're not necessarily expert level, okay? So as you can see here, if you run this command and this command, it's going to give you outputs, which is going to help you to determine, because one of them is just going to say nope, and the one of them is going to return a result likely to do with your website, okay? And like I said, whenever you get a hosting contract with a view to making a website, there will always be tutorials on how to get your first site up and running. So it's very easy to get that part done, but it's not necessarily so easy to then add more websites, which is the beauty of having a dedicated server. Now, I appreciate that many of you are probably using other setups. I was speaking to somebody last night who used Oracle with a free-for-life headless setup, and that's great, and that is amazing, but it can be very tricky to try and get some of the more complicated things done because they just don't give you the full command access. And I'm not knocking it, okay, because that's pretty cool giving you free for life. I have to pay for mine. And if you don't have a budget, that's an option. But I would say that if you have one website running and it's making money, maybe it's time to spend a little bit of money and make a little bit more money, because obviously you can open up your options. And that's by no means a comment to that guy. He was actually really cool. And I got some more stuff to tell you. He was giving me feedback on the video generation stuff. So let's just keep going. So the one that shows as active is your website. You can also check which one is installed, okay, with these commands, all right, Apache or Nginx. Now, the reason that isn't as useful as this is checking if it's running, okay? So obviously, if you have an Apache 2 server running, it'll say it's up. But this one checks for a version. And if you don't have it installed, it doesn't really tell you if it's running. You might have it installed, but it might not be running. And also, you must bear in mind, you might be running, well, I don't think you'd be running both, but there are some people that might be doing that. I don't know. But certainly not for running web server. You wouldn't run both of them for web servers, but I think Nginx can be used for a couple of other things. So anyway, let's just keep going. Because I don't want to make silly mistakes. So I'm using Apache 2. All right. So it goes, great. Now I can help you set up virtual host for your second website in Apache 2. Here's how we'll do it. Now, remember, all I've done at this point is tell him exactly what I want to do and then tell him which method I used. That's all I've done. And now it's given me a customized tutorial. This is the sort of thing that you would get. Like, I used to write tutorials on web hosting because obviously I ran my own hosting outfit for a while. And as I mentioned, maybe in the last video, if not in this one, but that was like 20 years ago. But the code hasn't changed, all right? Pretty much it's still virtual hosts. It's still the same sort of setup, right? Maybe 15, maybe no, actually, wait, 2005. Yeah, it's about 20 years now. So sudo mkdr var www second site. Now, of course, you might replace second site with the name of your website. So whatever your domain name is without the .com. And then it's even giving us how to do the permissions, which often people trip up on. So how to make sure that you can actually, write and make public these pages. Then it's going to give us the sites available configuration, and it's going to give us the full virtual host pattern. So obviously you would put your email address, your domain name, the name of your folder where it is, the name of your folder. Now for this, I just use second site because, again, sometimes I like to just go copy paste, and then see where it trips up. And to be honest, as long as you put your domain name in, and your email address in, you can use second site. You don't have to map it to the name of the domain. You could call it anything you want. There's no, it doesn't technically make any difference, okay? So essentially, what we're going to be doing is just following this, right? So we're going to do a2n site conf, so that's going to bring that up, and then it's going to restart. So it's going to bring this online. This is going to be actually enabled, and then it's going to restart the server. All right. Now, if we run into any problems, I will obviously ask him in my next conversation. So we'll get there. So let's make sure your existing site has its own virtual host configuration. Create one if it doesn't exist. Now, this is word for word exactly what I already had. So when I opened this up, it already existed and it already had the correct domain name for my 5 Below 5 website. So it perfectly matched what I was trying to ask him to do. Flawless victory for Claude. So we've enabled the first site. We've disabled the default configuration, okay, which was 000 default. And then we test it. So we do config test and restart Apache. So don't forget to update your DNS records to point both domains. So again, with your domain company, wherever you buy your domain name, you will have to add an A record which matches the external IP of your dedicated server for both empty or full stop, depending on how they do their platform, and for www. So that's an A record, www, for your domain name to the IP address of your server. Okay. And that's how you point your DNS to make sure that when people type the domain name, they actually get the website on this particular server. So to confirm the second site conf is pointing to my actual site, the domain is this. Okay, so then I'll help you check and configure virtual host specifically for scuffedepoch.com because that is what we're working on for this particular demo. If the file exists, well, hang on. Let's look at your Apache configuration. Sudo cat. So it asks me to look at what is inside secondsite.conf. If the file exists, it should show the virtual host configuration. If it doesn't match, let's create or modify it. So again, it did match because we have created it. But if you hadn't, then obviously that would allow us to do that. All right. Add this configuration. So again, it's the same virtual host configuration we looked at before. Create the directory structure, do all of the chmods. We've done all of that. Again, enable it. and then do config test and then restart and so on. You can also verify it with tail, so check the logs. You can also access in your browser, and you can also use curl. All right. Now, I decided, because again, like I said, I like to test, well, what would have happened if I just blindly copied everything? So I'm using the path second site. But again, basic obfuscation is not a problem. Okay. So understood. Let's modify the configuration. So we've gone back to using second site, as I was discussing just a minute ago. So we can skip past that, basically. We've then gone enable the site. We've then do Apache control config test, which is a very cool command, which lets you know that it actually is working. It's very cool. In fact, I think it checks for spelling errors, that one. I forget. It like checks that the syntax is correct. And then we restart it. We can also do curl to see if the DNS is actually pointing. So the directory path doesn't need to match the domain name. It's perfectly fine to use second site. Okay. So can you help set up SSL? Because I noticed at this point, we do not have HTTPS, and all modern browsers will flag the site as insecure if you don't have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Let's Encrypt, okay? Which is the standard way of getting yourself a free SSL certificate for your website. So we're going to do sudo apt update. We're going to do sudo apt install certbot. And I believe that at this point, I start to have an interesting problem because my server is quite old. It's probably going back about 5 years, this particular server, maybe more. And so as a result, the implementation of my certbot was lacking and needed some attention. And so we're going to jump into that in just a few minutes because this is a big, big thing. And it's very complicated. And like I said, I couldn't remember because I think I followed a tutorial to get my certbot running all those years ago. And this was really amazing. It took me through the process so simply. So here we go, certbot, blah, blah, blah. It tells me how to check the configuration. And look at this, certbot renew dry run. So we can actually simulate if the SSL is working. And then we do a curl. The certificate will auto renew. Okay. There's a cron job being created, but you can manually renew it with sudo certbot renew. Would you like me to help verify that this was installed correctly? So here we go. So curl localhost command is returning HTML for the first site, not the second site. So this is our first problem, which might trip people up because, you know, if I do a curl for scuffed epoch, it should be returning the new site, not this. So it was returning the HTML for my first site when it should be returning the HTML for this site. And that's something that you can't easily look up with a tutorial. Good luck Googling that one. Okay. So if you Google, in fact, should we just do it now for fun? Shall we? Curl H. Here, let's just do it now for fun because we've got a few minutes until we hit the halfway point on this one. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. So how about if I just get rid of the bit which is, for me, localhost command returning. I spelt returning wrong as well. That probably doesn't help. Google's not very clever. Returning localhost. This command is returning. Yeah, you can't see. What about if I said curl is returning HTML? See, good luck with that. I don't even see. Why does curl give me HTML instead of a file? So you're basically hopeless. You're stuck. You're lost. You'd have to spend a few hours, maybe. No, definitely. Yeah. I'm exaggerating now. You'd have to spend some time trying to figure out what the hell that even means. And if you're not au fait, this is where you'd end up having to hire a developer, which isn't what we're trying to do here. We're trying to showcase the power of LLMs. So this indicates virtual host configuration isn't properly distinguishing between the sites. Straight away, it knows exactly what we're doing. First, let's check virtual host configurations. So we go through this process. You follow it just like any tutorial you'd find online. Okay. And let's verify the Apache. Let's show which virtual hosts. Okay. And then I decided to start a new chat. All right. Start a new chat. It says if you're still seeing the first site, there might be a catch-all virtual host configuration or problem, right? Can you share the output of sudo apache ctl so I can identify the problem. Whether you have HT access. So let's go to the top of this chat now, because this is, I think, where we solved that. Yeah. So I believe that when we've gone through this, it solved my problem. Let's just check this. Yeah, it's a shame I couldn't leave a note here to let you know exactly what was done at that point. But the bottom line is you can debug this with the LLM, because I did solve this. I think it was just a typo or a reference issue. But again, the main problem that we're now moving on to, because we're at the halfway mark, is the SSL certificate. Okay, because now it's running. We've got our website up, but there is an insecure thingy at the top, right? So it would say, oh, see here, it says connection is secure. It was saying connection is insecure, blah, blah, blah. And that's bad. We don't want that. No one's going to buy anything from you if they think they're getting hacked. Okay, so, and it's a simple thing to fix. Now, the reason that my SSL certbot was not running was because it was popping up saying MATLAB. MATLAB interface needs to know where MATLAB is installed. And that confused the hell out of me, because MATLAB, to my knowledge, had nothing to do with, it had nothing to do with certbot. And again, it was saying that there was no MATLAB. So it was saying MATLAB needs to know where MATLAB is, but there's no MATLAB. And that was coming up whenever you tried to run the certbot. And I think what it turned out to be was my certbot was so old that it was actually like completely out of date and invalid. All right. So what I did was I just copied the error straight from the screen. Okay. When trying to use SSL certbot with my new website hosting, I received this pop-up on the Ubuntu server. So it says, this is unusual because certbot shouldn't ask about MATLAB installation. This suggests there might be a mix-up in package dependencies, or you've accidentally triggered a different installation process. For SSL certificate installation with certbot, you should be able to skip or cancel this prompt. And if you tried to close it, it would just stop the entire installation. It wouldn't run. So what we've done, and this is really cool because I've got to admit, I didn't know about snap. I didn't know sudo snap install call. I've never used this before. So I'm learning stuff at this point. I'm like, oh, wow, this is pretty fresh. So I recommend using the snap version of certbot as it's most straightforward for Ubuntu. Okay. And so it recommended that I do this, but my mistake was, I was installing certbot, not running it. Sudo apt install certbot python certbot apache is the command I used. So let's fix this by ensuring we're installing only the necessary packages for certbot and apache. Let's clean it up. So remove certbot python certbot apache. This is my old package. All right. Auto remove, clean. Let's try installing certbot using snap method again, which is what it's trying to make me do. And then after running it, you can get your certificate with certbot apache. If you absolutely need to use apt instead of snap, you can try this. In the end, I didn't need to do that. I did use snap, but we're still having some problems. Okay. The command sudo apt remove certbot python is triggering the same where is MATLAB screen. So I'm still getting stuck with this kind of broken dependency. So it says this is very unusual, gives me a whole bunch of other things to try, do sudo dpackage force all certbot. And then also if that didn't work, which it didn't, it still kept on popping up with MATLAB, dpackage grep MATLAB to prove whether there's MATLAB installed somewhere. And here is my result. So I did that and it returned if MATLAB support 0021 all distro integration for local MATLAB. So it may be that at some point in the past, I've installed and then uninstalled something that used MATLAB. Okay. So this has got nothing to do with my website, but this is because of something I've done historically on my dedicated server. And when I've removed it, I didn't fully get rid of it all. Something was still lingering in there, which was causing this problem. And this is just a good example of the kind of thing that can happen when you're running your own server. Okay. So it's given me some more commands. We've tried apt-get purge. We've tried remove, auto remove. Okay. So force all. We're trying to do all kinds of things here. So blah, and then I've run this and I said, and so everything at this point, it worked. how can we check this was installed correctly? Because obviously with the bumpy road that we've just come down, I want to make sure it's nice and smooth now, right? So we're going to do some tests. First, let's check the certbot version. So we do certbot version, then we say which certbot, and then we do the Apache certbot dry run, rather. Certbot Apache dry run, okay? And then it's going to give a snap list, right? Certbot plugins. All of these things are run exactly in order as it was told. And so certbot Apache dry run returns. Dry run currently only works with the cert only or renew commands, subcommands, right? So basically it gave me a bit of a duffer. So I got to here and it didn't work. Okay, something went wrong here. So what I've done is I've said, I did that and it said this. So that's all you have to do. Tell it, I got to that point. I typed this and it gave me this error. So this is what you told me to type. Returns : this is what came out. Very simple stuff. Anybody can do that. So let's modify the dry run command to use cert only. So it's given me an alternative, and that's going to simulate the certificate obtaining process without making any changes. All right. We're now going to check it, and this will get the, so if it worked, we'll do that. If this runs successfully, okay, you can do the next command. All right. And I believe done. So I have 4 domains currently, 5below5, 5below5.uk with the www. I'm just being a bit of I'm being a bit sort of, what do you call it? I'm trying to be strict here because technically it is 4, but even though there's actually 2 domains. For multiple domains, we need to ensure all domains are properly secured. Here's the best practice. First, make sure domains are properly pointing to your server and Apache virtual hosts are correct, right? So it gives me commands to check that, all right? So as you can see, it's checking the certbot for both with and without the www. That's one of the things I was trying to check for, because I've seen it in the past where it works for www or it works without and it won't work with the other. So I wanted to be 100% certain that we're actually getting our HTTPS across all 4 possible things people can type in for these 2 domains, right? And we're not even getting into subdomains because that's a whole other thing, right? So /-d specifies domains and lists them together. So it'll create a single certificate that covers both the root and the www subdomain. Yeah? This is more efficient than having separate certificates. After running these commands, it will ask for your email address. If it hasn't already, it must have already had it on file because it never asked me for that. Never asked me to agree to terms of service either. So I must have already done it. Like I said, it does keep some things on the machine. So if you've done it once historically, it's probably not going to ask you for that. So bear that in mind. If you don't see it, don't worry, don't panic. And it will ask if you want to redirect. So again, it didn't ask me for any of these actual things when I did this. But don't panic. So verify all certificates, test the automatic renewal. Would you like to proceed with securing the first pair of domains? I say yes. Let's proceed with securing the original website first. Okay, and as you can see, yep, it did work. Okay. Certbot cert only. So again, we're going through all these commands. We're literally just having a conversation with our developer, you could say, and he is then telling us exactly what to do. So this should now show a new certificate for both with and without the subdomain www. So let's do a dry run. I said it should take 24 to 72 hours for the DNS propagation to complete, which is true. However, because I'm inside the UK and it was a UK domain hosting company, it was basically already done within an hour. So by the time I'd done all of this, it was actually up and running. Because when I bought the domain, I immediately set the IP address as the A record. That's the first thing I did. So by the time I'd written this code and done all of this stuff, it was actually all working. So check if Apache is serving your domains. You can do that with curl. Check the DNS is resolving. You can do that with dig. Very straightforward stuff. And it's really nice for it to just literally give me the best commands. Because like I say, you might not know this, or it may have been a long time since you did it last time. I'm not expecting everybody in this audience to like be pro web developers. You know what I mean? So I don't expect you guys to know the ins and outs of Linux server administration. And I've got to admit, since like 2017, I was adminning a large GTA 5 online server. So I wasn't even like running websites necessarily. I was doing all kinds of other stuff. So anyway, let's just keep going. So here are my results. We're going to just keep going because there's probably stuff on there that doesn't really matter, but you know. Let's check the existing certificates, certbot and that. There we go. The old domain is working correctly. However, the new domain might take some hours for the registrar to update. So actually, I was wrong. It was immediately working. I was just trying to sort of pre-prime the LLM to not expect everything to just work. But as it happens, it did work. Everything was fine. I gave it my full response there. So good news. So I gave it my full response. And now, because I was so happy with this, because like I said, it did such a great job. And if I go back to my main website, we have a radio station here. So you can click on that, or you can click on the radio. You can launch it and then hit play. And all of my sort of AI songs are playing on my internet radio station, right? So I wanted to, but there was a problem with the SSL certificate and it wasn't running. There was something wrong with it. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, one, it didn't have SSL, which it does now, if we take a look, but also it just wasn't running anymore. And I think it was because I tried to add something else to my server, which didn't work. And I didn't know how to fix it because I wasn't really sure what had broken, if I'm being completely honest. I think I did like some auto installer of some crazy software I was looking at, and it inadvertently broke my radio station. I didn't know how to fix that. So what we're doing now is we're going to ask him to fix that. So I said, the website Scuffed Epoch is now up and running. However, we have a new task related to the 5 Below 5 website. There is a radio station that's running on the same server. However, it fails to load. The web page at 5 Below 5 public radio might be temporarily down, or it's moved to a permanent new web address. So it gave me all the commands, guys, all the commands to troubleshoot. And like I said, I couldn't get this information from the developer. I tried to contact the developer of Azuracast, and it was like, it's your problem, mate. No offense, they're not bad guys, but like I said, it is my problem. If it's my server, it's my problem. That's one of the things that's the downside of having your own dedicated server. But with Claude and various LLM assistants, not so much of a big deal. So we might run over on time for this episode. We're coming up on half hour, but I do want to quickly run through this with you, okay? What we're going to do is it's going to check my Azuracast sites available, and it's going to check what's going on with the proxy rules, what's going on here, where is it? So it's going to do all kinds of things. It also wants me to output the Docker. And like I said, when I did my Docker, it goes permission denied, which isn't encouraging. Okay. And that's because my user wasn't even I always type sudo. So this is actually an important thing. Yeah. You should have typed sudo. All right. Or add your sudo to the user mod. Sorry, add your user to the user mod group. But the funny thing is that then it was like, I've never done this before. Make a Docker group. Never done that before. So that's, like I said, I was learning stuff because I've always just typed sudo or manually added my user, which I obviously hadn't done on this server ever, which is kind of funny actually. But yeah. So after that, you can run Docker commands. So here we are running our Docker command, var Azuracast, Docker PS, or da-da. So, and so then I've dropped in my response. So, because it's quite long, I copied the whole thing from the terminal and pasted it in. All right. I'm not going to bother looking at it because it's probably got a whole bunch of stuff there that I shouldn't really be showing off. But the point is that, you can see it now. Azuracast is mapped to 10443, but there's an SSL certificate mismatch. Of course there is. So Azuracast is running on its own SSL on port 10443, but it hasn't been properly configured. And you have to do it inside their sort of little web interface, which isn't really great. So I wanted to do it a different way. And this is what's going to let us do that. So it's going to take us into the Azuracast path, which I've told it what that path is. And then it's going to make us do a backup, which is great practice. And then we're going to nano the environment. We're then going to add the let's encrypt. We're going to do compose down, compose up. Okay, so bringing the Docker down, bringing the Docker back up again. And then alternatively setting up a reverse proxy. I don't think I had to do that. I don't remember now. So there is the reverse proxy. And then we're going to re-enable it. So bring that, enable that config, and then bring it, restart the Apache 2. All right. And then at this point, it should all start working. So unfortunately, it did not. I got about as far as doing the backup and it couldn't do it. So obviously, got to run it with sudo, guys. Because again, as I keep saying, constantly, when I do these guides, I want to show what happens when you just do what it tells you. Okay? So obviously, it's going to go, no permission, sudo, right? So that's super user do for anybody that didn't know. So this is like admin permissions in Windows. If you don't have administrator, you can't do certain things. And it's the same exact thing with Linux. In fact, it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. So we're going to do our let's encrypt. We're going to save the changes. Compose. We're going to take Docker down. We're going to take Docker up again. All right. So that's basically restarting it with sudo. The error you get was because var Azuracast is owned by root. You can verify this with LSA Azuracast. So Docker is up. However, now when we see the website Azuracast embed, there is a new error. Bad gateway nginx. And this might be part of the issue. It may be that when I set up Azuracast, I set it up on nginx, which I probably shouldn't have done. But like I said, don't worry, Claude is going to come to the rescue and save us. So cd var Azuracast docker logs, all right. Also verify that the service is up, and then try accessing the port. Well, it's not localhost, but whatever, because I'm not actually on the server. It's assuming here that I'm actually connected to my server when I'm actually using a cloud sort of remote, it's a remote dedicated server at a hosting company. So check if nginx configuration is correct. So it gives us a bunch of stuff to check that. So we're going to docker compose exec web cat, and then the path to the config or where it should be. We can also try restarting just the web service, which is what I actually. So now what we'll do is we'll say da-di-da-di-da. In fact, after this point, radio station is working. Okay. And so then it makes some recommendations to me. You know, and then I think I tried to do a bonus challenge, which didn't matter, and it couldn't figure this out. I wanted to know if we could get rid of the port number from the URL, which I know is possible, but wasn't working. And we tried doing reverse proxy with Apache to make it cleaner, but it didn't work. It couldn't figure that out. And as you can see from the chat, we spent as much time as we have so far on failing to do that. So there are limitations, all right? And this is the most important thing. Always back up your successfully done changes, all right? So it was very easy for me to keep going and then roll it back because I know what I'm doing there. But just be careful, because sometimes it'll send you down a path and it starts hallucinating because you reach the end of the limit of its knowledge. As soon as we start getting into this sort of technical challenge, right? So here you can see it trying to help me out with this, but it actually starts to go a bit crazy. So at this point, the radio station's working. I'm happy. And we are done. So there it is. Like I say, if I take a look at the website, obviously I haven't completed the website yet because I wanted to show you this at its current point. So what we've got is we've got a clean template. These are all the same. Okay, clothing is the only one that was developed further beyond the main template. And looks like the t-shirts are selling pretty well. Lol. But yeah. No logo yet. I ordered one of these. It's nice. Like I said, I've got it now on my desk. It's pretty good quality, actually. I thought it would be funny to get a scuffed hat for the scuffed epoch. Like I say, it's like worn. It's got like a few nicks and damage to it, you know. I don't know why it's coming up in gray, because I don't think you can choose a different color. Oh, wait, yeah, you can. Okay, there's 2 colors. I got mine in black, so there it is. Also, we got 2 different style hats as well. This one is like a, like it's got like a mesh. It's got a mesh at the back half, and this is more like a sort of skateboarder type. It's got the flat peak, right? But anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. So, like I said, you can use Claude to go from, I've got an idea, buy a web domain, get yourself a web hosting, get it to help you, and then use Shopify to put your products up for sale. And you don't have to drop ship. You don't have to use print on demand, but you can. You can also use your own inventory. So if I did actually have a whole bunch of, I'm going to be selling some posters, basically, guys. I got a big printer, and we're going to be covering that too in a future tutorial. So look out for that. A3 Plus printing for your AI generations. Like I said, we do all things AI here. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.